I never thought my biggest regret would come from a wine glass and a boy I helped raise. It's hard to even say it out loud. Harder still to write it. But it happened. And no matter how much I wish I could erase that night, it's carved into me like a scar I can't hide. So if you're here for the pretty version, you should stop reading now. But if you've ever done something so shameful, so life-shattering, that it keeps you up at night, then you'll understand why I need to tell this story. It started on Labor Day weekend. My husband's sister, Rachel, was visiting us with her son, Caleb. 21 years old, just finished college, and taller than I remembered. He was staying with us for a few weeks before starting a job in another state. A stopover, really. Nothing unusual. My husband, Mark, had to leave for a business trip the same weekend. He tried to postpone it, but it was one of those must-attend deals with his company's biggest client. I told him not to worry. I'd keep the house warm and the guests happy. Rachel and I were never best friends, but we got along fine. She was the bubbly, wine-loving, oversharing type. Caleb was quieter, more reserved, but polite and always helpful. Honestly, I saw him as the responsible, nerdy kid I used to babysit when he was 10. Until that weekend. I don't know if it was the way he'd filled out or the way he started talking to me like an adult. His voice had changed, deeper, confident. His eyes didn't dart away when he looked at me anymore. And when he smiled, it wasn't just polite. It was different. But I never saw it coming. That night, everyone had gone to bed early. Rachel was exhausted from the drive and the wine, and I had just finished cleaning up after dinner. I poured myself a final glass of red and went to the living room, only to find Caleb still awake, watching some thriller on Netflix. "You're still up?" I asked. He nodded and smiled. "Couldn't sleep. Want to join me?" I should have gone to bed. I should have said good night and climbed upstairs to my husband's empty side of the bed and called it a night. But I didn't. I sat down. At first, we watched in silence. Then we started talking, light stuff at first. Work. School. How he was nervous about moving to a new city alone. Then he asked me how marriage was going. It caught me off guard. "It's fine," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Just fine." I laughed a little. "Marriage isn't always fireworks and fairy tales, Caleb. Sometimes it's just two people trying not to drift apart." He looked at me for a long time, then said something I'll never forget. "You deserve fireworks, Dana." I froze. There was something in the way he said it. Not playful. Not childish. It felt like a man speaking to a woman. And I didn't correct him. I didn't stop it. Instead, I poured another glass. Somewhere between the third and fourth glass, the lines blurred. He moved closer. We were sitting too close, but I didn't move away. His arm brushed mine, and my stomach flipped. My heart was pounding, and the alcohol didn't help. I was warm, flushed, and lonely in a way I hadn't admitted to myself in years. I was the first to say something stupid. "God, you've grown up," I whispered, my eyes locked on his. He leaned in slightly. "You noticed." And then he kissed me. Soft, hesitant, testing. I could have pulled away. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. What happened after that was a blur. Clothes came off. Whispers filled the dark. Every inch of my body screamed that it was wrong, but my mind was swimming in wine and warmth. I told myself it was just the loneliness. That Mark had been so emotionally distant for months. That I wasn't thinking straight. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to feel wanted. And Caleb, he made me feel that. I wish I could tell you it stopped before it went too far. But I'd be lying. We went all the way. Right there on my living room couch. My husband's nephew. My family. And when it was over, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt sick. Caleb kissed my shoulder and whispered something I couldn't even hear. I was already slipping into a fog of shame and nausea. I got up without a word, picked up my clothes, and ran to the bathroom. I stared at myself in the mirror, mascara smudged, lips red, hair wild. Who was this woman? If you've ever crossed a line you swore you never would, then you know the feeling. It doesn't hit all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a wave rising just beneath your chest. And when it crashes, it takes everything with it. If you've ever made a mistake that changed your life forever, hit like and subscribe. Because this story isn't over. And trust me, the worst is yet to come. I curled up in my bed that night, hugging my knees, feeling colder than I ever had in my life. Outside my door, Caleb's footsteps padded softly back to the guest room. Like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just torn something sacred apart. But I knew. I knew I had broken something that couldn't be fixed. Not just my vows. Not just my self-respect. But something deeper. Something I wouldn't fully understand until the morning after. The morning after tasted like shame. The sun came up bright and loud, like it had no business exposing everything I'd done in the dark. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there, tangled in sheets that suddenly felt like a trap. My skin still carried his scent, and the memory of Caleb's hands on me haunted every inch of my body. I wanted to scrub it off. I wanted to pretend it didn't happen. But it did. And now I had to wake up and play the role of the perfect hostess, the loyal wife, the put-together woman who hadn't just committed the most unforgivable mistake of her life. When I finally dragged myself out of bed and down the stairs, Rachel was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee in her robe like everything was normal. She looked up and smiled. "Morning. You look exhausted," she said. "Late night." I nodded quickly. "Yeah. Couldn't sleep." She shrugged. "Blame the wine. Caleb and I are heading out to run a few errands. Need anything?" I shook my head, barely managing a tight smile. Then he walked in. Caleb. He had this casual confidence about him, wearing the same t-shirt from last night, like nothing had changed. His eyes met mine across the room. For a moment, I saw it, that flicker of recognition, the silent acknowledgement of what we'd done. But then it was gone. He poured himself coffee, made a joke to his mom, and just like that, he was her son again. Not the boy who had kissed me. Not the man who had touched me. Not the mistake that would ruin everything. They left around noon. I stayed home, said I had laundry and calls to make. The truth was I needed to breathe. I needed to fall apart without an audience. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I cried for the betrayal, for the vow I broke, for the innocence I crossed, and for the fear. Because what if someone found out? Mark would never forgive me. Not in a million years. He trusted me. I was the one who always held our family together, the one who made things work when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I had no excuses. I wasn't drunk enough to forget. I wasn't coerced. I made a choice. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. "Are you okay?" I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the screen. I wanted to tell him no, that I wasn't okay, that I was shattered, but instead I typed back. "We need to talk. Tonight. When everyone's asleep." He replied immediately. "Okay." My stomach flipped. Not with desire, but dread. I spent the rest of the day avoiding Rachel. Pretending. Smiling when I needed to. But every time Caleb walked into the room, I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. It was like he didn't care. Like he thought it meant more than it did. He was young. Maybe he thought it was romantic. But to me, it was a grave I was now buried in. That night, the house finally went quiet. I stood by the window in the hallway, staring out into the backyard, wondering how everything in the world could still look the same when everything inside me had changed. I heard him coming. "Caleb." He walked up behind me, his voice soft. "You wanted to talk." I turned slowly to face him. "Yes," I whispered. "Last night was a mistake." He didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like I'd slapped him. "I know it wasn't planned," he said. "But it didn't feel like a mistake to me." "It was wrong," I replied firmly. "Your family, Caleb. I'm your aunt, by marriage. Yes, but still. What happened can never happen again." He stepped closer. "I'm not a kid, Dana. That's not the point," I snapped. "You're my nephew. I love your mother. I love my husband. I betrayed both of them. And for what? One night. One mistake I'll carry for the rest of my life." His face changed then. The charm dropped. He looked hurt, and a little angry. "I didn't force you," he said. "You kissed me back. You wanted it." I closed my eyes, ashamed. "I know. And that's what makes it worse." He took a breath, then turned to walk away. But just before he disappeared down the hall, he said over his shoulder, "Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me." And just like that, he was gone. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, shaking. He wouldn't tell anyone. But I couldn't stop thinking, what if he changed his mind? What if Rachel noticed something? What if Mark found out? I wasn't just scared of being caught. I was scared of who I was becoming. If you've ever done something you regret so deeply that it threatens to destroy everything you love, then like and subscribe. Because this story is far from over and the consequences are coming. That night, I finally slept. Not because I was at peace, but because I was too emotionally drained to keep pretending I had control. The truth was I didn't. And in the days ahead, I would learn just how deeply one night, one decision, can spiral into a lifetime of regret. You know how some secrets feel like they're tattooed on your skin. Like no matter how you dress, no matter how you smile, people can see it on you? That was me. Every day after that night felt like walking through a minefield. Every question from my husband sounded like a trap. Every look from my sister, Rachel, made my stomach tighten with guilt. And Caleb, he didn't help. If anything, he made things worse. It started with the looks. Those slow, meaningful glances across the dinner table. Then the little jokes, the light touches when he passed behind me in the kitchen. Too casual for anyone else to notice, but not for me. I noticed everything. One night, he actually winked at me, while sitting right across from his mother. I nearly dropped my fork. Mark glanced at me. "You okay, babe? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just tired." It was becoming harder to breathe in my own home. The breaking point came one weekend afternoon. Rachel had gone out with friends. Mark was at the golf course, and Caleb, he was still in the house. I didn't realize he was home until I came down the hallway and heard the music coming from his room. Loud, steady, pulsing with bass. I thought about walking past, but then his door opened. "Hey," he said, leaning in the doorway, shirtless, sweat glistening on his chest. I froze. My eyes darted to his face. He was smirking, like he knew he had power over me. "We should talk," I said quickly. "About what I said. I meant it. We need distance, Caleb. This isn't a game." He took a step closer. "You keep saying that, but you keep acting like you want me." My heart pounded. "Don't do this. I'm not the one who came into my room last weekend," he said, voice low. "You kissed me, remember? I was drunk." He smiled. "Maybe. But you weren't drunk when you asked me to come to your room the next night." I went cold. "No one's ever made you feel like I did. Not even him." I slapped him. The sound echoed down the hall, shocking even me. He blinked, stunned for a second, then gave a bitter laugh. "That guilt must be eating you alive, huh?" he said, rubbing his cheek. "But you don't get to act like I'm the only one who wanted it." He turned and went back into his room, slamming the door behind him. I stood there shaking. The walls felt like they were closing in. That was the moment I knew this wouldn't just go away. It wasn't a mistake anymore. It was becoming a problem, one that could destroy everything. That night, I told Mark I wasn't feeling well. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely look him in the eye without feeling like a monster. The next morning, Rachel came into the kitchen holding her phone. "Hey," she said, sounding concerned. "Did you say anything to Caleb lately? He's been acting off." My hands froze over the sink. "Off how?" She shrugged. "Just moody, distant. He said something weird last night about not being welcome in his own family. I thought maybe you two had a fight or something." I laughed it off. "No, not at all. Maybe he's just dealing with school stress, or guy stuff." She nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly, like she didn't fully believe me. That scared me more than anything. Later that day, I sat in my bedroom with the door locked, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I had crossed a line. I knew that. But now, I was starting to worry Caleb might cross another one. What if he said something to someone? What if he wanted to get back at me for pushing him away? The paranoia was real. The guilt was unbearable. If you're still listening, and you've ever watched a single mistake threaten to rip your life to shreds, then hit like and subscribe for more stories that show just how quickly the line between control and chaos disappears. That night, I woke up from a nightmare. In it, Mark had walked into the room while Caleb and I were together. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked at me, like he didn't even recognize the woman in front of him. When I opened my eyes, I was sweating, my heart pounding against my ribs. The fear was real. Because deep down, I knew if Mark ever found out, I'd lose everything. My marriage, my home, my sister, even my own self-worth. And I couldn't live with that. So the next morning, I did the only thing I thought might fix it. I told Caleb we needed to come clean. Not about everything, but enough. We'll tell Rachel we had a misunderstanding, I said. That you said something inappropriate, and I asked for space. That's it. It'll give us a reason to stay away from each other without raising questions. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You want me to look like the creep? I want this to end, Caleb. He stood up and walked toward the door. It already did, but something in his voice told me he didn't really mean that. As I sat alone in the kitchen later, sipping my cold coffee, I stared at the family photo on the fridge, me, Mark, Rachel, and Caleb, smiling, arms around each other like nothing could ever come between us. But now everything had, and I had no idea how to fix it. It's strange how secrets cling to the walls of a house. You think no one hears, no one sees, but the truth has a way of settling into the air, thick and impossible to breathe. I thought I could contain it, that if I distanced myself from Caleb, played the perfect wife, and faked enough smiles, the guilt would eventually fade. I was wrong. The lie didn't just sit quietly in the corner, it grew. It grew in Caleb's attitude, in Rachel's eyes, in the silence between Mark and me, every time he reached for me in bed and I turned away, claiming a headache or stress. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that Saturday night. It started like any other. Mark grilled burgers in the backyard, Rachel made cocktails, and Caleb sat on the patio scrolling his phone. We were supposed to be celebrating Mark's promotion. Laughter floated in the air, glasses clinked, and the scent of grilled meat masked the tension I felt in my chest. I was wearing a red summer dress. I remember because Caleb looked at me a little too long when I walked outside with the potato salad. That stare. My stomach twisted. He hadn't looked at me like that in weeks, and for a brief second, I hoped maybe he'd finally let go. But I should have known better. As the evening wore on, the drinks flowed more freely. Rachel was 2 margaritas in, Mark was loosening up, and Caleb disappeared. I found him in the kitchen, standing by the fridge with a beer in his hand, staring blankly at the wall. You okay? I asked quietly. He didn't look at me. Do you ever think about it? My heart stopped. Don't. Why not? He snapped, finally turning to me. You act like I forced you. Like it was one-sided. I didn't imagine it, Dana. Lower your voice, I hissed. He laughed bitterly. You think pretending it never happened will make it go away? I can't even look at you without remembering what we did. Just then, Rachel walked in. She froze, and I swear the air turned to ice. What's going on? She asked slowly, eyes bouncing between us. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Caleb looked at me, then at her. Nothing. Just talking. Rachel didn't buy it. She narrowed her eyes, set down her glass and walked past us. But something had shifted. I saw it in her posture. She knew something was wrong. And I knew time was running out. That night, I barely slept. Mark snored softly beside me while I lay there, eyes wide, heart pounding. I kept waiting for Caleb to knock on our door, or worse, for Rachel to barge in and scream, I know what you did. The silence was worse than any shouting. The next morning, everything shattered. I came downstairs to the sound of Rachel's voice. Sharp, shaking, furious. You sick bastard. I ran to the living room, still in my robe. Rachel stood there, phone in hand, face pale with rage. Caleb sat on the couch, silent, shoulders tense. What's going on? I asked, heart in my throat. She held up the phone. I saw the messages. You thought you deleted them, but I found the backup. You were texting her. I froze. Mark came in behind me, rubbing his eyes. What's all the yelling? Rachel turned to him. Ask your wife. Ask Dana what she's been doing behind your back, with my son. The room went silent. Mark stared at me like he hadn't heard her right. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Caleb stood up. It wasn't like that. Rachel spun on him. Don't defend her. She's your aunt, Caleb. How could you? Tears filled my eyes. Rachel, please. Don't you dare please me. You're supposed to be my sister. Mark looked at me, jaw clenched. Is it true? I choked on my words. I was drunk. It was one time. I didn't mean for it to happen. One time. Rachel screamed. Then what about the texts last month? What about the second time? Mark's face crumbled. Get out, he said quietly. Mark, please. Get out. That night, I packed a bag with shaking hands and left the home I had built for over a decade. I left the man who trusted me, the sister who loved me, and the boy, no, the man I never should have touched. I sat in a motel room later, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror, trying to understand how I had become this person. Was it loneliness? Was it the alcohol? Was it just a moment of weakness that spiraled? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that the damage was done. If this story has pulled at your heart, if you've ever watched one mistake unravel an entire life, hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic tales that cut deep and stay with you. Days turned into weeks. Rachel blocked me on everything. Mark filed for divorce. I sent a long letter, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, not to get him back, but just to explain. He never replied. As for Caleb, I never saw him again. I heard through a friend that Rachel sent him to live with his dad out of state. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe he'd heal. Maybe, eventually I would too. But guilt is a funny thing. It doesn't just visit you, it moves in. It wakes up with you, follows you to the grocery store, lingers on every smile you fake. And some nights, when the silence gets too loud, I still see that red dress in my mind. Still hear Caleb's voice saying, "You kissed me, remember?" I do remember. I'll never forget, because some regrets don't fade. They fester.